Welcome to Culture Camp, Jill. How are you today?
I'm very good, Kerry. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Let's start with who you are, what you do. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Gill Hasson. I don't know whether to call myself a writer or an author, but yeah, I do both. I'm a writer and I'm an author of books around subjects to do with well-being, mental health, realizing your potential. Stuff around resilience, emotional intelligence, positive thinking. I've written a lot on mindfulness.
Mm.
So those are the sort of areas that I write about. And it's also something that I do a lot of teaching and training around. I started, probably 20, 25 years ago, working at the University of Sussex and some other organisations in what's known as community education. So that's running courses, delivering courses in people's communities. So that means in pubs and clubs and community halls, so that people feel safe coming. If they're apprehensive about education, they'd feel safe coming to those sort of local places to come on courses and then move on from there.
Yeah, I love that approach. And I think the community development aspect of education within community development is something. There's a course in one of the colleges near us here, but I don't think there's enough of it in represented universities. So it's great to hear that you've been part of that.
Yeah.
So the thing that really attracted us to you, Jill, was the kind of books about particular skills and qualities that people can use, people can develop and adopt when working in groups and groups creating a group culture. So
Yeah.
when we had a little pre-chat, we started off by talking about some of those skills like resilience and mindfulness, but then we came across this topic that we both had quite a lot to say about, which was about standing up for things or speaking out when things aren't right
Yeah.
within a
Yeah.
work culture, within a work context. Do you want to just introduce that sort of topic to us?
Yeah, I think it's something that's very much in the news recently about situations where somebody has behaved in a totally unacceptable and inappropriate way. And alongside examining that person and their behavior has been looking at, well, how did this happen? What did other people do or allow or turn a blind eye to? And what we're increasingly seeing is that people aren't speaking up. They're not letting others know when something is inappropriate, when it's not acceptable. And I I recognize that it's not easy. We've all been in a situation, whether
Yeah.
it's at work, in with a group of friends, or in our family, where we've recognized something as not being right, not acceptable, inappropriate, and we haven't spoken up. There's reasons why we don't do that.
Yeah. And we talked about this concept of psychological safety, and maybe the lack of psychological safety in a workplace might be a barrier to people speaking up. And I want to know a little bit more about that. So I want to know how we can create psychological safety. But first of all, like, what are the barriers, do you think, to people speaking up in that kind of work context when they see something that isn't right?
Yeah, I think there's several reasons. One is that we lack confidence.
Hmm.
We think, "Oh, I don't know what to say or how to say it. I don't know who to report it to. I feel I should have said something at the time to that person, but now it's too late." So we can go over and over those sort of like, "Oh, I wish I had. I should have done it." Get ourselves
Yeah.
tied up with that and end up not saying anything because we we didn't say it in the first place, so we don't have confidence to say it
Um,
now, and we don't know how to say it or who to report it to. Another reason is because we won't be believed, or we'll
yeah.
be ridiculed, or we'll be humiliated.
Mhm.
Another key reason is that it could affect our job and our career. So
Yeah.
we well, if I speak up, that might be a bad mark against me. And also
Mhm.
just workplace politics. If you're maybe speaking up about something that other people think, well, no, we don't agree with you, we think it's acceptable to do that,
Mm,
then you start to become isolated. So I it's all very
yeah.
well. I would never say, well, everybody has to stand up and speak out. It's
Hmm.
really that simple. It doesn't mean to say you shouldn't do something, but it's recognizing that, yeah, it's not always easy.
Mm. I definitely recognize that last one, that kind of internal politics and, group dynamics where they're not particularly healthy. Um, and also, I suppose if you're not sure that somebody else would stand up for you,
Yeah,
it becomes doubly harder to stand up for someone else. And it feels like the sort of maybe lower confidence or maybe worrying about your job security might be things
yeah,
that are more likely to affect people maybe at the beginning of their career or maybe in
yes.
a new role. What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely, I'd agree with that. In fact, last week I was listening to the radio, and a woman who was a surgeon was being interviewed in the light of the fact that a new report had come out saying that a lot of female surgeons had reported being sexually abused or harassed
Mm,
actually in the theatre. And
yeah,
this particular person who was being interviewed commented that although she had experienced some levels of sexual abuse when she first started, it became less and less as her career progressed. And then she realized in retrospect, well, of course it became less and less because I became more and more authoritative. I went
yeah.
up the scale in my career and I became a senior surgeon. So, yeah, no
Mhm.
one was there. But when I was young and vulnerable, so yeah,
Yeah.
that was for me, that was a good example of how things, affect different people in different
And
ways.
it's power, isn't it? So when you've got that kind of power and experience, then these things are less likely to happen to you. So, if you've always had that power because you're in a particularly, you might be a white man or you're in a
Yeah,
particularly high-powered
sure,
job,
yeah,
then it's very
yeah,
difficult to recognize that those things do happen, I suppose. But
yeah,
maybe let's think about those two ends of the scale. So if you're in that position where you maybe do feel more vulnerable because you're either younger or newer in a role, what are the things that you think that person could do to call out this behavior or to stand up for themselves? What skills do they
I
need?
Okay, so I think first of all, as we know, there's strength in numbers. So it's not having
Mhm.
some sort of campaign where you start creating an us and them situation.
Yeah.
But if you have experienced or seen some sort of behavior that is unacceptable or inappropriate, I'm assuming that maybe you have got some friends at work, some people that you get
Mm,
on well with. So get some support. That's really important. Get some support
yeah.
at work amongst your colleagues if you can, rather than it just be you. The other thing is, of course, with things that are more serious, you can go to HR and you
Mm,
can get outside support and advice from people like ACAS. That
mm,
organization can help you. So that there's, find out what your rights are, and get some support. So, but on a a lower level, yeah, just get some support from colleagues, and
mm,
then um, you know, make it that you're not ganging up on anyone. You
yeah.
don't want to be seen to be doing that at all. But it's a way of actually having a bit of power and strength yourself.
Mm,
Look, I've noticed this, it's unacceptable. There's
yeah.
two or three of us here who are prepared to stand up as well and say they've seen it and they don't find it acceptable and they want to
Yeah.
change.
And actually, so challenging the power directly might feel really intimidating, but often there's people that are kind of, if not colluding, they're sort of, they know, they see things. And I wonder if
Yes.
having those kind of side conversations to explain, maybe even just explain that how that makes you feel, and being sort of having those kind of conversations might help those people that are maybe nearer to the power do a bit of influencing work there as well.
Yeah, I think it's yeah, explaining how a situation is affecting you. It might be affecting you personally, or you might
Yeah.
see someone else being treated in a way that you find
Mm,
unacceptable.
mm,
So, but not just leave it hanging by saying how you're feeling about it. I think that
mhm.
that just, it's not dumping your feelings on someone else, but it is just putting them
Sure.
out there. And then what? So actually, it's really important to say, have a solution, to
Yeah.
say, this is what I
Yeah.
do want to happen, and this is what I don't want to happen. You
Mm,
don't have to be really demanding or aggressive about it,
mm,
but just say, look, I've witnessed this, I've experienced this, I don't like it, I don't think it's appropriate, and what I want to happen is this, or what I don't want to happen is that.
yeah. Yeah.
We have some sort of idea. I've written a lot and taught a lot about assertiveness. It's actually following the rules of assertiveness, and those are
Mm,
that you, in any one situation, you decide what you want,
mhm.
you decide what you don't want, you think about how far you're prepared to negotiate and compromise. So you might
Okay.
ask for some changes in behavior, and go, you not expect it to happen tomorrow. And so you
Sure.
might be like, I want to see a change in the next month, or at the next
Mhm.
meeting in 2 weeks, I want to discuss this. So
Yeah.
you wouldn't want immediate changes. So decide what you want, decide what you don't want, decide how far you're prepared to negotiate and compromise. And then, this is really important, you have to decide beforehand what you're going to do if you don't see the changes that you want.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we're getting really extreme, if it actually means leaving your job, you
Mm, mm,
can't do and change everything, but it could just be, well, if I don't get what I want, I'm going to go and get further advice, or I'm going to
yeah.
HR,
Yeah.
or I'm going to, uh, I'm not sure, but look at what
Yeah.
your options are. But I find that you have a lot more power as an individual if you decide before you say anything what you're going to do if you don't get what you want. Because if
Mm,
somebody just tells you to go take a running jump,
yeah.
you're left, uh, oh, now what? And it really deflates you. But if you've already decided, think about, what if
You've
I,
got a plan, you've got
yeah,
steps. Mm.
yeah,
And I think, as a coach, I often see people who, you know, at its extreme are ill because they're living outside of their values, often in a workspace. So,
yeah,
you know, they've decided at some point that they're just going to cope and that it's okay and they can squash how they feel about something down.
yeah,
And then they've ended up with some kind of chronic illness, or they've
yeah,
burnt out, or they're just not able to give their energy to their family, for example. So I
yeah,
think, it's serious, this stuff, isn't it? And often it can come at personal cost if we don't do something about it. Um, but I suppose somebody might
definitely.
also need that support around getting that clarity at the beginning as well, and working out, like, you know, what am I prepared to do? Say, what consequences am I prepared for?
Yeah, and yeah, you do. You have to realize that there are always consequences.
Mm,
Sometimes things work out great, and you
yeah.
feel, wow, gosh, if only I'd known it was that easy, or it
I
was
was
all
listened to. Yeah.
absolutely, and that
Mm,
does happen. But other
mm,
times, yeah, you have to be prepared for the fact that, I work freelance, for example, and
mm,
I've worked for or with organisations where I haven't been at all happy about how things have gone, and I've spoken up and
mm,
refused to accept certain behaviour. And I remember one organisation where I refused to do things how they wanted, because it was
mm.
utterly inappropriate. And we had a discussion about it, and I knew that they would never hire me again.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I I recognize that. But the great thing for me as a freelancer, anyone who works freelance knows that the great thing is that you have all the flexibility.
Yeah.
But the bad thing is you don't know when the next piece of work's going to come in. But I did speak up and speak out.
Mm,
I refused to accept some particular behaviour and ways of doing things, and yeah, I finished the work, but they never hired me again.
Mhm.
And I knew that would happen, but
Yeah.
that's okay.
And if they
You
had
know,
hired you again and you hadn't spoken up, your feelings and your how you were around that work would be very different, wouldn't it? You'd end up
definitely.
regretting that decision not to speak up. I would
Definitely. Yeah, and I would not have had any I would had not any self-respect, but I
imagine.
would have felt bad about myself. And there's nothing worse than thinking, I think, having regrets. Oh, I wish I'd said something, I should have done
Mm,
something. And actually, somebody who knew me at this particular place emailed me the following week, who was a staff member at this
mm,
organization, and said, "We've all heard what you did and how you refused to put up with this. And we all admire you so much and wish we could do the same." But because
mm.
they were employees and had
Yeah,
paid jobs,
yeah.
they were in fear of losing their work.
Mm,
Whereas, as I said, the advantage is as a freelancer, you can just walk away. Yes, they'll never
yeah.
hire you again. But of course, as a freelancer, well, there has to be loads of
There's
other people
more.
out there who will hire me.
Mm,
Otherwise, you
yeah,
couldn't work like that.
yeah, yeah. And it is amazing how often when you do stand up for yourself, you do say the thing, people, you get those little emails through, or people might pull you aside
Yes,
at a meeting or something.
yes,
And often people are wanting to do that. And if you can role model it, which I guess brings us to that other end of the scale. So if you're maybe higher up, more experienced, you've maybe got more power, you've maybe got more authority in an organization. What's important about standing up for what's right in that kind of role? What are your responsibilities, do you think?
well, first of all, yes, you're role modeling. So
Mm,
that's important. You're showing that, yes, and so you've got more confidence and authority. So it's easy for people to think maybe about you. Oh, it's all right for you. You're the supervisor or you're the manager, but
mm,
it can inspire others. It also means that you are helping to create this psychological safe space for
mhm.
everyone, where they recognize that if you stand up for your rights and other people's rights, that they can approach you with things that maybe they don't feel they can call out, but they can come to you about,
Yeah.
and then ask you to take it on.
Mhm.
So it's important as a manager. You can do things like, for example, if you have regular team meetings, you can help create safe spaces for people to speak up by just having on the agenda each time that you meet at a team meeting something simple such as what's gone well this week
Yeah.
and what hasn't gone well, and anything. What are your concern? Are there any concerns, not just about the job but the way that everybody's getting on, what's
Mhm.
happening, and allow people to express that and not turn it into some big support group, but just
Yeah.
to be able to flag things up and be taken seriously, and for people's concerns to be seen as valid.
Mm.
That's really important, because if you just let people speak up and then do nothing about it, then people soon clam up again and think there's no point.
Yeah.
There's no point
Yeah.
in anything. So I
Or
think
tell them off. So
yes,
that's
yeah,
another thing, tell us the problems, tell us what's happening, and then people tell, and then
yeah,
and you're penalized or punished. I've
yeah.
seen that happen as well.
Yeah,
Um,
or humiliated. So if as a team
mm,
leader you saw someone else rolling their eyes,
yeah, yeah,
it's your responsibility to say, "Hey, if not right at the time, say,
yeah.
Pete or whoever it is, what's your
Mm,
problem? What are you making a face like that for?" Maybe take
mm,
them aside at some other point. I saw in the meeting you rolled your eyes when Joanna said about
yeah.
this. What's going on? So
Mm,
it, as anyone who is a manager or a team leader knows, it's all about people skills, and
mm,
these are some of the people skills you need to have. But you have
yeah.
such an influence as a team leader and a manager, not just as a role model, but actually creating that healthy, supportive team dynamic.
Yeah. And as the leader, I suppose the fact that you've noticed and that you care enough to make a stand on something shows a bit of your humanity, shows a bit of vulnerability yourself as
Yeah.
well. And it reminds me of, I don't know if you heard of this in the during the pandemic, there was NHS thing where they were creating what they called wobble rooms, which were kind of, I think they were online spaces that you could go to with colleagues to show your humanity, to have a bit of a wobble. And they weren't exactly, like you say, they weren't exactly support groups, but they were those spaces where you could be a bit more human. And another one I've heard of is mistake meetings, so that you're kind of normalizing, that we all make mistakes and we all slip up sometimes, and we all try and do better, and how we might do that. So I think there's quite a lot of stuff around sort of failure and learning from failure that we're seeing in organization.
Absolutely. And being allowed to be vulnerable. Without being so being vulnerable and being able to make mistakes, and for other people to it's a real skill set. I'm involved in a community group where somebody last week sent an email telling me I was well, not an email, it was on the group WhatsApp, saying, Gill, you're totally mistaken about that, and this isn't the case. And I thought, no, I know I'm right about this particular issue. I've it really is about facts and figures. So I said, rather than go, no, I'm right.
Especially on a message group. That could
I just thought, okay, I understood that it was this, and it was that. Am I wrong in that? To which he then replied a bit later, oh no, I've just been through the information. No, actually, you were right. And so that him, I didn't go, see. Then I just went, oh great, that's great that that is the case then. So I would say that that's an example of someone being he made a mistake. I didn't start arguing or humiliating him afterwards when he admitted that, oh yeah, you're right. So I think it's modeling that as well. I'm a huge believer that
quite a lot of grace within that, isn't there? There's quite a lot of it's the vulnerability, but it's also the I don't know, grace is the word that comes to mind. Humility, I guess.
Grace is about having humility, about not having not having to be right all the time. And also I think there's another phrase that we often use now, which is like being the adult. Someone else might have behaved badly, like a kid, for example, but be the adult in all of this. You don't have to get locked into sort of like, but you said this, no, and I said that. We'll get into all of that. Have grace, have humility, have the confidence to know that it's okay to let things go. By that I don't mean let bad behavior go, if it turns out you're right, you don't then have to make a thing about that.
And I love that, and your framework around assertiveness as well, and those kind of steps feel like really useful kind of prompts to think about if you are in this particular situation. Where can people find out more about that, or more about your work in general, Gill?
Well, so I do have a website. It's Gill Hasson. That's Gill with a G, GILLHASSON, gillhasson.co.uk, and I've got a page with all my books on resilience, assertiveness. I do have a particular book that's been I think it was a Sunday Times bestseller. I can boast about.
Don't forget that.
That's called How to Deal with Difficult People.
Yes.
So that's but it's although I've written a book specifically on assertiveness, that one does use assertiveness techniques, but it's more specific about dealing with other people. Mindfulness, emotional intelligence. You'll see all my books on there and some of the courses that I run.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Gill. It's been really great getting into that topic of standing up for yourself or standing up for others, and definitely needs exploring as part of developing people's organizational cultures and cultures at work. So it's been really useful. Thank you, Gill. Take care. See you later.
Thanks, Kerry.